Hello everybody, my name is Zen, and patch 2.3 for Diablo II Resurrected is live with a bunch of really cool changes. First off, I apologize for any snottiness. I've got a head cold that I've had for 2 weeks and can't seem to get rid of, and my nose is all clogged up, and oh, it's awful. I hate it. But this patch, I do not hate. In fact, admittedly, I took a break from Diablo II Resurrected shortly after it launched due to stability issues and their server issues that they were having. And I figured, I would come back when the time was right. Well, I feel like the time is right now. Let's get into it. So there's a bunch of PC changes and console changes. We'll do a lot of the PC stuff, and we'll focus mostly on that because that's where a lot of the cool stuff has come. But know that if you're playing on console, there's a huge amount of fixes that have come. And if you want a full list of details, I suggest going and looking at the patch notes, which you can find all over the place. Heck, you could go to Diablo Fans and you'll see them there. Here's the thing. The coolest thing that they've added for offline specific players, now you might be an offline player because of all of the server issues that were happening at launch, they've allowed you to now do game difficulty scaling in offline games. It's available in the options menu while you're playing in an offline game, but essentially, if you don't know, if you're playing Diablo II Resurrected and you have people join your game, the monsters get harder because you have more people, so it needs to scale up the health. But it also makes finding treasure and whatnot. It's the same thing in basically any action RPG from now until the end of time. It just scales things up, playing with multiple people. Well, now you could do that. You can make things more difficult, enemy-wise, as a solo player by simply going into the options and changing the game difficulty scale up to 8 players, which is really fantastic. That's on both PC and console. But specific on PC, you can now enable Force Move, which is something that Diablo 3 players specifically use because it makes just playing the game significantly easier. Essentially, you push a button and instead of attacking or doing an action at the location that you're casting it, you're essentially just focusing your character to move there instead of do anything else. So you can now bind a force move within Diablo 2, which is really nice. There's also quick cast, which means that if you hit a button that is bound to a certain ability, which is something that you could do on PC. I'll talk about the console stuff in a moment here and how this all works together. But essentially on PC, typically Diablo 2 players can bind things through it suggests F1 through F8, but in the key bindings, you can mess around that kind of stuff. But let's say you had an ability bound to F1 and maybe it was your Scroll of Town portal. And before you would have to hit F1, which would then equip it to one of your left click or right click on PC and then click and do it. Well, now you just have to hit F1 and it automatically casts it. So that is really handy, especially for playing an assassin like I am with my traps and everything, because I got my ability that makes me move super fast and it sucks swapping back and forth between those every couple minutes. Now I don't have to worry about it. They also have active skill bindings bar available to turn on in the PC interface, which doesn't look great. Compared to the console interface or when you're using a controller on PC where it switches to the console interface, where it just has essentially a very Diablo 3-esque interface on the bottom instead of your typical PC Diablo 2 stuff. You can see it on screen now, the bindings are there so I can see what my abilities are bound to. You don't necessarily have to have this on PC. Once you have your bindings done and you know what ability is on what key binding, then it's really nice, but it is available there for people who like to see the abilities on the bar. And I like that. It's cool that it just fills up as you have more and more bindings, but at the same time, like I said, it doesn't look great in comparison to, say, when you're using a controller or you're playing on console. I actually prefer that console interface more. I mean, there's no reason not to. It is an updated interface. It was made in modern game development time as opposed to back in 1999, 2000, when Diablo 2 was first made. It's a sign of its times, the PC interface back then. But the new interface I like more. I like that I can put the active skill bindings bar on PC, but I would still prefer just playing with a controller when I'm doing normal stuff. And if you don't know this, and you haven't tried it on PC, try playing with an Xbox controller for like general gameplay. It just feels better. It's really weird, but it does. It works really well. Highly recommend it. And then you can switch back to keyboard and mouse for inventory management, because that's a nightmare on console and controller. Also, a PC-specific addition is the ability to turn on DLSS, which is deep learning super sampling. It's a NVIDIA-specific technology. So if you're running a newer NVIDIA card, like a 10 series or above, I think is what it is, you're going to be able to enable this, which in layman's terms, it's far more complicated than this, but in layman's terms, what it's doing is it's using AI to render the game at a lower resolution and present it to you at native resolution or higher. So in general, the game is going to run a lot better because it's putting less load on your graphics card. This was a technology that was put to the test in Cyberpunk 2077 and worked freaking fantastic. Like my frame rate in particular, when I first got the game last December, when it first came out, I went from like 40 FPS to like 70. It literally just jumped a huge amount of FPS turning on DLSS. And in other games since, it also works. So if you're running it, you could turn it on PC, which is nice because you can also turn it on in order to run the game at a higher resolution. So if you have a 4K monitor or a 1440p monitor, absolutely turn on DLSS, run the game at a high resolution, and it's going to look fantastic and run a lot better as well. Unfortunately, this is not available for AMD cards or for the consoles, but it is a cool tech if you're able to turn it on. I don't notice a difference, and the reason why is because I already have the game locked in with VSync, because if I don't play with VSync on, I get really bad screen tearing for whatever reason in Diablo 2 Resurrected, so I have to turn VSync on. But I'm sure it would make a big difference if I was running at a higher resolution. I would probably see a significant increase in performance. There's also just a stupid amount of other fixes, bug fixes, and quality of life stuff that have been added to the game. I suggest going again and looking at the patch notes just to kind of dive in and see exactly what's there. Specifically, if you're playing on console, just to see if specific issues that were affecting you have now been fixed. I know that Nintendo Switch players were really struggling for a while there, and there seems to be a lot of fixes that have come through and made the game far more playable for them, which is really good. And then on top of that, it's just, like I said, a bunch of quality of life stuff that have been added. For example, like on Switch, or I think it's just on console in general, but it might specifically be Switch. Your summons actually despawn and respawn next to you if you get too far away from them, like they teleport to you. So stuff like that is just really nice. Oh, also like a weird Nintendo Switch thing, if you happen to hit the joystick on the Joy-Con while on a cut scene, it no longer skips it. It's just like the weird stuff like that has all been fixed. So I suggest going and looking. But with all of that said, like all of these changes, all of the new quality of life stuff, I absolutely approve. I think that it is really well done, and I think it's in a good direction for the game, especially for a modern audience returning to this game. And especially if you're like me and decided, I'm going to come back when the game is a little bit more stable, now is definitely the right time. There's some cool stuff in here, and if you wanted to come back to the game, yeah, I think that you're going to find a lot more to love about the game than before. It's still the same game, right? But it's just got some extra quality of life stuff that make it feel more like a product that is going to not absolutely crash when everybody jumps online, because that was a nightmare. Let me know in the comments what your favorite addition with this patch is. And of course, make sure to subscribe, because I may end up be posting some more Diablo 2 stuff when the first ladder season starts, and I'm super excited about that. But with all that being said, thank you guys for watching, and we shall see you all next time.